Let's talk about the first kind of toxic person you must never keep around, the energy drainer. These are the people who can walk into a room and somehow make it feel smaller. You know the type. You could be in the best mood, feeling centered and alive, and within 10 minutes of being with them, you're exhausted, irritated, or second-guessing yourself. It's not because you're weak. It's because energy is real. Human connection is an exchange, and when that exchange becomes one-sided, it starts to erode your sense of balance. Energy drainers are experts at taking. They don't always mean harm. Sometimes they've just learned to survive by pulling from others rather than cultivating strength within themselves. But whether it's intentional or not, their presence costs you peace. They'll come to you for advice but never apply it. They'll lean on your kindness but never offer support in return. They feed on attention because they haven't learned how to feed their own soul. And the more you give, the emptier you become. This is where awareness becomes power. Protecting your energy doesn't mean cutting people off without compassion. It means discerning who genuinely adds value to your life. It means asking yourself, how do I feel after I spend time with this person? If you constantly leave drained, confused, or emotionally heavy, your intuition is speaking to you. Listen, energy doesn't lie. You can pretend someone's words sound supportive, but their energy will always tell the truth. You see, life is about alignment. When you're around people who vibrate at a higher frequency, those who encourage, uplift, and challenge you to grow, you naturally expand. You think bigger, you feel stronger, you act with confidence. But when you're surrounded by people who thrive on negativity, who find problems in every possibility, your light begins to dim. You start matching their energy, lowering your frequency to make them comfortable. And once you start doing that, you begin abandoning yourself piece by piece. This isn't about arrogance or isolation. It's about self-respect. You weren't put on this earth to constantly pour into others while your own well runs dry. True generosity comes from overflow, not depletion. When you protect your energy, you create boundaries that allow you to give from strength, not weakness. You can't heal the world by letting people bleed your spirit dry. You can only heal by becoming so grounded, so full of your own light, that your very presence uplifts others without sacrificing yourself in the process. There's a simple truth here. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. Access must be earned through trust, consistency, and mutual respect. You can love people deeply and still love yourself enough to say, I need space. You can care for others without carrying their chaos. You can be kind without being consumed. And when you do that, when you finally draw that line, you'll notice something extraordinary. Your focus sharpens, your creativity flows, your confidence returns. You begin to operate from purpose rather than obligation. Every meaningful transformation begins with energy management. You can have all the ambition, all the strategy, all the opportunity in the world, but if your environment is filled with people who drain you, you'll never reach your potential. Protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's the foundation of strength, clarity, and peace. So remember this. You are not responsible for keeping everyone comfortable. You are responsible for keeping your spirit alive. Some people can't come with you to the next level, not because they're bad, but because they're not ready to rise. And that's okay. Protect your energy not just for your sake, but because your future depends on it. Now let's talk about another type of person who can quietly poison your peace, the manipulator. These people are some of the most difficult to identify because they don't come at you with open hostility. They come cloaked in charm, wrapped in kindness, often pretending to care about your well-being. But their real motive isn't connection, it's control. They use emotional influence to bend you, to shape your choices, to make you feel small enough that they always hold the upper hand. Manipulation is never about truth, it's about power. It's a silent strategy of dominance played through guilt, obligation, and confusion. Manipulators know exactly how to twist your empathy against you. They'll make you feel responsible for their moods, their failures, even their happiness. They'll say things like, after everything I've done for you, or you've changed, as if growth were betrayal. They guilt you for having boundaries, shame you for having needs, and reward you only when you comply. Before you know it, you start questioning yourself, your intentions, your memory, even your worth. What's dangerous is that manipulation doesn't always feel like manipulation at first. It feels like compromise or kindness or loyalty. You convince yourself you're being understanding, when in truth, you're being controlled. That's the genius of emotional manipulation. It doesn't need force, it thrives on your willingness to please. And that's why awareness is your greatest weapon. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. You start to notice the subtle tactics, the selective memory, the exaggerated guilt, the way they shift blame while playing the victim. To protect your energy from manipulators, you must master one powerful skill: detachment. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop being controlled by how they feel. You begin to respond instead of react. You learn to pause before explaining yourself, because manipulators feed on your explanations. It's their entry point into your emotions. They want you tangled in justification, so you lose sight of your truth. But when you stop defending your worth, when you simply stand in it, they lose their leverage. Boundaries become your armor. And I'm not talking about the kind you announce out loud, I'm talking about the ones you live quietly. The inner knowing that says, I don't owe anyone access to my peace. You no longer get pulled into emotional traps because you see them for what they are. Tests of control, not tests of love. At the core of this dynamic is something deeper: your relationship with your own truth. Manipulators thrive in the spaces where you doubt yourself. They sense uncertainty like sharks sense blood in water. But once you know who you are, once you ground yourself in clarity and integrity, their influence dissolves. They can no longer twist your emotions because you no longer need their approval. You begin to realize that the only person who needs to understand your choices is you. And here's what's fascinating. When you step out of their control, they often panic. They'll call you cold, selfish, or heartless. That's because their control depended on your confusion. But you owe no one your confusion. Peace feels cold only to those who are addicted to chaos. The truth is, the moment you stop participating in manipulation, the game ends. Manipulators don't need your anger, they need your absence. They don't need confrontation, they need disconnection. You don't win by proving them wrong. You win by walking away grounded in your own power. Because the real victory isn't showing them who you are. It's remembering who you were before they made you doubt it. So never apologize for protecting your peace. Never feel guilty for walking away from someone who uses love as leverage. You weren't created to be controlled, you were created to be free. And the moment you reclaim your emotional independence, you take back not just your energy, but your entire life. Now let's talk about another kind of person who can quietly drain your energy: the chronic victim. These are the people who live in a constant state of helplessness. They see life as something that happens to them, not something they can shape or influence. Every setback becomes proof that the world is unfair. Every challenge becomes someone else's fault. And while you may start out feeling compassion for them, and you should, it doesn't take long before that compassion turns into fatigue. Because no matter how much support, advice, or encouragement you offer, they always seem to end up in the same emotional place, powerless. The truth is, there's a big difference between being a victim of circumstance and living as one. We all experience pain, disappointment, even betrayal, but those who stay in that state, who make suffering their identity, slowly drain the energy of everyone around them. They've learned to survive not by growing, but by being rescued. And if you're not careful, they'll pull you into their pattern. You'll find yourself carrying emotional weight that isn't yours, constantly trying to lift someone who has no intention of standing up on their own. What's tricky is that chronic victims often appear vulnerable, even humble. They'll say, "I just have bad luck," or "no one ever helps me." And it stirs something human in you, the desire to help, to fix, to guide. But what you eventually learn is that they're not looking for transformation, they're looking for validation. They don't want solutions because solutions would end the story that gives them significance. Their comfort zone is misery, and your empathy becomes the fuel that sustains it. Now, don't misunderstand me. Compassion is powerful. It's one of the highest forms of human strength. But compassion without boundaries becomes self-destruction. You cannot heal someone who is committed to staying broken. The most loving thing you can sometimes do is step back and let life become their teacher. Because pain, when protected from consequence, never transforms. Growth requires responsibility, and responsibility begins the moment someone stops saying, "Why me?" and starts asking, "What now?" Protecting your energy from chronic victims isn't about indifference. It's about discernment. You must learn to tell the difference between someone who's temporarily wounded and someone who's addicted to suffering. One wants to heal, the other wants to be rescued. And when you rescue someone who refuses to grow, you don't just lose energy, you reinforce their stagnation. You become part of their cage, not their liberation. There's a psychological truth at play here: identity is powerful. People would rather stay in pain than lose the sense of self they've built around that pain. That's why transformation is so rare. It demands letting go of who you think you are. The chronic victim fears that if they release their story, they'll lose significance. But real significance doesn't come from suffering, it comes from overcoming it. So what do? You lead by example. You live your healing out loud. You show what it looks like to take ownership of your life, to rise above excuses, to create meaning out of adversity instead of identity. You stop explaining and start embodying. And when they're ready, truly ready, they'll follow that light. But until then, you have to protect your space. Because if you keep surrounding yourself with people who refuse to grow, you'll start shrinking to fit their comfort. Their hopelessness will start to sound like your inner voice. Their limitations will begin to feel like your reality. And that's how potential dies, not from failure, but from emotional suffocation. So remember this: empathy should elevate, not exhaust. You can care deeply without carrying. You can love without losing yourself. Protect your energy by choosing to support growth, not dependency. Because the truth is, you can't save someone who's committed to their suffering. You can only refuse to drown with them. And then there's another kind of toxic person you absolutely must protect your energy from: the envious one, the fake supporter. The person who smiles in your face but secretly hopes you stumble the moment you start to rise. These are the individuals who will tell you they're proud of you, but you can feel the resistance in their tone, that subtle edge in their praise. It's not what they say, it's the energy behind it. You walk away from them feeling smaller, doubting yourself, questioning your worth, even though on the surface everything seemed friendly. That's the thing about envy. It's quiet. It doesn't announce itself with hostility. It hides behind politeness, sarcasm, and backhanded compliments. Jealousy is one of the most corrosive human emotions because it doesn't just live in the other person. It starts trying to live inside you. When you spend too much time around someone who secretly resents your progress, you begin to dim your light just to make them comfortable. You downplay your achievements, you shrink your joy, you censor your success. Why? Because you don't want to make them feel bad. But the truth is, you're not responsible for someone else's insecurity. The moment you start adjusting your authenticity to protect another person's ego, you begin betraying your own potential. What makes envy so dangerous is that it's subtle. It doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people closest to you. Friends, family, colleagues, the ones who say you've changed when you start evolving, the ones who make jokes about your dreams, the ones who remind you of your past when you're trying to step into your future. These aren't always overt attacks. They're emotional anchors disguised as concern. But underneath, there's a pattern. Every time you move forward, they find a way to pull you back. You need to understand something powerful. Energy alignment matters more than history. It doesn't matter how long you've known someone if their presence constantly drains your growth. Some people are not meant to go where you're going. They're not bad people. They're just not ready to expand. And if you keep them too close, you'll spend your life managing their discomfort instead of fulfilling your purpose. The envious person doesn't just want what you have, they resent that you have it. Because your light exposes what they refuse to confront in themselves. Your growth makes their stagnation harder to ignore. Your courage highlights their fear. And that's why their support always feels conditional. They'll cheer for you as long as you stay beneath them, as long as your success doesn't trigger their insecurities. The moment you rise higher, you'll see the truth. The applause fades, the distance grows, and the silence becomes loud. So how do you protect your energy from envy? You don't fight it. You don't argue or defend. You simply separate and rise. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth, because true alignment doesn't require validation. The people meant for your next level won't be threatened by your growth. They'll be inspired by it. They won't compete, they'll collaborate. They won't gossip about your progress. They'll celebrate it as if it were their own. That's the beauty of true connection. It expands both people. It creates a shared frequency of abundance, not a battle for attention. When you start surrounding yourself with those kinds of souls, your energy multiplies. You feel lighter, more creative, more alive. Because finally your environment matches your evolution. So be brave enough to let go of the ones who smile at your face but pray for your fall. You don't owe loyalty to anyone who betrays you in silence. Protect your energy not just from the obvious enemies, but from the subtle ones who hide behind love and sabotage in disguise. Because the truth is, not everyone who claps for you wants you to win, and that's okay. Your responsibility isn't to be liked, it's to stay aligned.